Listen, I have to take good care of my doctors. If I take good care of my doctors, they will take good care of my patients. This is how it works. Invest in your people, and they will do everything they can to make sure that the customer and the patient are well taken care of. It's a mantra I've seen that I just can't not live by.
What a great philosophy. I'm Rip Esselstyn, and welcome to the Plant Strong podcast. The mission at Plant Strong is to further the advancement of all things within the plant-based movement. We advocate for the scientifically proven benefits of plant-based living and envision a world that universally understands, promotes, and prescribes plants as a solution to empowering your health, enhancing your performance, restoring the environment, and becoming better guardians to the animals we share this planet with. We welcome you wherever you are on your Plant Strong journey, and I hope that you enjoy the show.
Hello, my Plant Strong pineapples. Rip Esselstyn here for another rockin' episode of the Plant Strong podcast. You might be able to hear it in my voice, but I've got a little bit of a head cold that hit me over the weekend, and I'm getting over it, but man, I'd forgotten what it was like to have a cold or be sick. In fact, that's because I don't think I've been sick since March of 2014. So it's been a pretty good stretch that I've gone without so much as a cold, but this one kind of got me. Speaking of which, it's appropriate because I know that a lot of us, sometimes we want to see a physician that is up to date with lifestyle medicine and is mission aligned with, all of our knowledge. And sometimes it can be really frustrating going to our traditional doctors. And so we as a team, we get asked all the time if we have resources and connections to plant-based physicians. And I love that you're all thinking this way. And I also know that it is incredibly hard to source and research these experts. That's why I am absolutely so thrilled to introduce you to a company called Plant Based TeleHealth and one of its founders, Dr. Laurie Marbas. So a little bit about Plant Based TeleHealth. It makes lifestyle medicine available to everyone from the comfort of your own home, which after the last 2 years we've had, I'm sure comes as a relief to many of us. In fact, they are celebrating their second anniversary, and that's because they launched their service right at the beginning of the pandemic. Now, Dr. Laurie Marbas she's a force. And today you're going to hear her journey through medical school with 3 kids in tow, no less, her service in the Air Force, and incredible stories of patient health transformations just by changing the food on their plate. Dr. Marbas and her team at Plant Based TeleHealth have amassed 9 physicians over the last 2 years, including my friend, the wonderful Renaissance man, Dr. Michael Clapper, and they now service patients in all 50 states, and Dr. Marbas herself is licensed in not only all 50 states, but also D.C. I told you she's a force. Before we hop in, I want to share something else that is now available in all 50 states. Plant Strong Foods. If you haven't heard by now, our no added sodium broths and our 4 ready-to-eat chilies and stews are now available in all Whole Food Market stores, and we're rapidly adding more retailers every week. Also available nationwide is our Plant Strong pizza crust kits, our no added sugar, no added oil granolas, our Plant Strong popcorn, and the ever popular Rip's Big Bowl cereals. You can order any of these delicious, nutritious, and convenient products online at plantstrongfoods.com. We're on a mission to help people eat strong food, just like my guest today. So let's get right to it. Please welcome Dr. Laurie Marbas. You're now in Longmont,
Colorado. Is that right?
I am. I'm just outside of Boulder. So my youngest just graduated college. That's number 3. And
wow. You look like you should be in college.
I'll pay you later. Thank you. No, actually, my daughter is a physician, believe it or not. So I got, time just kind of flies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know about your journey. So where did you grow up? What got you inspired to go into medicine? And then, why in the world would you do something as crazy as get into plant-based medicine? I also know that you were in, the United States Air Force. I mean, crazy stuff. So I want to hear.
Well, it's been a really blessed life, but a very busy life. But it started, I grew up in a family of minimal means, and my dad was a truck driver. My mom was a bookkeeper in New Mexico in the desert. So it's not too much exciting there. I was the first to go to college.
Family? You have brothers and sisters?
I have a complicated family history, but a few sister and brothers. One has passed, but sorry, I'm about to sneeze here. But it's been a really very interesting journey. So I grew up, with a family that understood a pauper's diet, which was a lot of plants, right? We grew our own vegetables and we had a lot of beans. I had a lot of beans. I had good microbiome growing up. So, switching to fully plant-based has no problem.
And do you still like beans?
I love beans. So beans,
that's good.
Beans are a staple. But, so I understood the value of at least, coupon clipping and the food that way. But growing up in New Mexico, we didn't have health insurance. And so my mom and dad, really struggled to put food on the table, much less pay for insurance, and jobs were scarce and there was a lot of moving around. And my sister, 6 years younger than me, got really ill. And when she was little, she would have recurring fevers. And we were told by the local primary care doctor that it was normal for a 2-year-old to have 102 fevers and urinary tract infections recurring. And my parents, not knowing any better, just trusted the medical professionals. And she continued to decline in her health until we were finally actually referred to a small town urologist in Clovis, New Mexico, if you even know where that is. And she had surgery, and she had been born with, between the kidney and the bladder, there's a ureter, and it was kinked, so to speak. And she kept having infections because of that back, you couldn't fully discharge all the urine into the bladder. And so she would get recurring infections. Anyway, she went from this 4-year-old when she had the surgery, who was very ill and sickly, to a really pain in the neck little sister. I was like running around, getting into my stuff. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. Well, it was cool she's getting my stuff, but it was really cool to see a doctor who did this surgery. I remember being in the hospital thinking, this is the coolest place ever, because this is where my sister got well. And I was like, I want to do that. And that's how it started. And
isn't it? I just want to pause for a sec. And isn't it remarkable sometimes how you can have an experience like that, and it totally influences kind of the direction of your life.
No, absolutely.
Very, very powerful. Okay. So go
absolutely.
ahead.
Yeah, no, so then I made it my mission to do well in school. I graduated valedictorian of high school, the nerdy doc type kid, and went on to college at the University of Portland, where I met my husband.
I'm gonna stop you. I'm not gonna let you kind of recite it all. So we're gonna get some color in here.
Oh Lord.
So you're the valedictorian, but is that because you just worked really hard? Was it because was it because it came easy to you? Were you like, do you have a photogenic memory or something like that?
Oh, if only I could have a photogenic. I could tell you, medical school has some interesting stories I can get into about how I use cartoons to make it through medical school.
Oh, I know about that. You wrote 6 different books.
7.
A mnemonic.
Yeah, 6 in mnemonics, and one in the 7th one was visual. Well, it's basically using clinical procedures. But no, I had no talent or special skill. I'm very thick-skulled, slow learner, just a hard worker. Understood the value that the more I put in, the more I got out. So this kind of was, that was a parent's work ethic just beat into me.
So valedictorian, and then where do you go after high school?
I decided I didn't like the deserts. No offense, New Mexico, you got amazing sunsets. But I was like, I'm off to the trees. And so I went up to the Northwest to University of Portland. And that's where I met my husband when I was 19. It's my first boyfriend. Wow. We've been married almost 30 years. And God bless his soul. He dealt a lot with me. So I went ahead and I finished. I couldn't afford more than 4 years. So I squished it all together in 3.5. And I stayed home for 6 years and had 3 babies. Such blessings, Emily, Jonathan, and Gabriel. And then I went back to medical school when I was 28. And I got my MD, MBA. I had a whole lot of stuff going on. My grandmother lived with us for 8 years during my 3rd year of medical school. She had breast cancer and a stroke. So I was overwhelmed with the amount of information.
Why was she living with you and not somebody else, just the way it happened?
There's that one person that always kind of steps up and wants to help and says, come.
You decided to step up and do that.
Yeah, we had to because, she had left a really, a very difficult situation with her marriage, and it was physically violent. And so there's a lot of messed up history. This family, I love them, but oh boy.
Well, it's not unique. It's everywhere.
No, absolutely. And so I learned the value of finding people that you love and holding on to them tightly and really appreciating them. And my grandmother was that person for me. And so when I grew up, my grandmother was my person. My stepdad wasn't a kind human. And so when I needed someone, she was the one that was always there. And she really encouraged me to if you want to be a doctor, you will do it. And
was this your mother's mother or your father's?
Yes, this is my mother's mother. My mother was an only child. And so we took her in when things got really bad. And it was such a blessing. I mean, when I remember when she had the breast cancer and she was going through chemo, she was fully white hair at 40. There's a lot of those genetics. And, it killed her. She's just losing this gorgeous thick mane of hair, kind of like your dad's, and one night at midnight, she goes, Laurie, could you just please shave my head? And we both cried at midnight while I'm shaving her head, and all her hair is just falling to the ground. But those are the moments, that they stick to me. She has since passed. But my children had an opportunity to live with their grandmother. My in-laws actually lived with us too for 6 years. I had a cousin live with us. So, we're just kind of multi-generational. Come on, stay. We've had my daughter's friend live with us for 3 or 4 months. So, the more the merrier. We feed them plants and
great attitude. Love it. Now, where'd you go to medical school?
I went to medical school at Texas Tech. Guns up. Woo. And guns up, Red Raiders. And when I was in medical school, like I said, I had a lot of stuff going on. My husband was active duty Air Force at the time. He was driving 100 miles one way to work, 100 miles back every day. God bless him. And so I was like, they send you, this was back in the late 90s, and they sent me this stack of papers for pharmacology one day. And I'm like, oh, is this all it for the whole semester? Like, oh, no, that's just 2 weeks. I'm like, oh. So I was like, well, this will be fun. And I'd always loved to draw. So I started drawing cartoons as mnemonics. So for example, I would draw a Pepsi bottle as peptidoglycans. It's a drug class. And then I would draw a little van for vancomycin, which was the particular drug. And I would color it red for the Flushing syndrome. And it'd be driving over these little mean looking sugars because it does something to amine sugars. Nice. Anyway, so a lot of my classmates started using them. And before you know it, we're publishing books with Blackwell Publishing. I think Lippincott, I don't think they're out in public. They're not even in publication anymore. But I had a patient last week who I see regularly. I take care of her little one who's a type 1 diabetic. And she holds up one of these books. Now, these things were published almost 20 years ago. She's like, what I got, Dr. Mar? I was like, oh my goodness, where did you get that? She goes, I don't know, but I saw that. I heard you talk about that, and I just had to get one. I was cracking up. I'd never had anyone do that before, but what a joy. Anyway, I literally tell people, I could take it for what it's worth, but I made it through medical school drawing cartoons. So I'm not sure if you want to trust me or not, but I'll do my best.
So you made it through medical school, not only drawing cartoons, but also being a mother. And how many kids did you have when you were going through medical school?
They were 5, 3, and 10 months.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah,
What?
Emily and I started medical school and kindergarten the same day. I cried. She was all excited, but she's my doctor. Emily's also my doctor. So she's the doctor in the family.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
So did you all move to Texas Tech when you were going to medical
Yep.
school?
Yep. So I lived in Lubbock. My husband was stationed in Clovis, New Mexico at Kane Air Force Base. So that's 100 miles away. And then he would drive 100 miles for 2 years. He did that. He drove a 200-mile round trip so I could pursue my dream of being a physician. There's not many people in the world that would do that type of sacrifices. So I've been really, really blessed. I am so thankful every day.
That's amazing. So tell me this. You also, when you were at Texas Tech, I read that you got the Golden Headed Cane Award. What in the world is that?
My husband got it framed for me. It's hanging up here. Well, there's an award that they don't tell you about until the day you graduate, which is really exciting because then they want you to give a little speech. You're like, oh, okay, there's 1,000 people here. It's an award that basically they say exemplifies the care and compassion of a physician. And so, being a mom, it makes it a little bit easier to have a little compassion. And, I was one of the 2 moms in my class, my medical school class with kids. And so it was such an honor to be voted that by faculty and the students. I was truly honored. It was undeserved, but thankful.
and that award goes out to one
person.
One person.
Yeah.
Wow. You are very, very humble. Way to go. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So you graduate, and then what do you do?
Oh, I graduate. Then I go off I stayed in Lubbock to do residency, a family medicine residency, which was an incredible educational experience. We were so busy and I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with my patients and it was just a wonderful time. But then I went off to active duty Air Force at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia and got deployed a few times and got to
who's watching the kids? Who's watching the kids?
My poor husband and my in-laws at that point.
Not your grandmother? Your grandmother wasn't?
No, she had passed the year that I moved to Virginia. She had cancer. Well, we think it was another type of cancer in her colon and died after surgery. But my in-laws moved in with us when we moved off to Virginia. And so my husband's Filipino. So it was a lot of fun. And, the really fun thing about having my in-laws live with me and a different culture is all the fun, stories and the interviews. My father-in-law eventually passed in 2011. So this was in 2006 to 2011 of lung cancer. And just, he was there. He took take care of his uncle who was in the Bataan Death March. And I videoed him a few months before he passed, telling his life story. It was just an incredible, amazing experience and journey. So just amazing. So,
yeah. Okay. So you go into family medicine, right?
Yes. Family medicine.
And you love family medicine?
I do. The joy when you go into medicine, remember, it was the healing process. It's the whole healing journey, helping people feel better and taking care of multiple generations. I was actually wanted doing pediatrics because I loved kids so much. But when my grandmother had breast cancer during medical school, the family medicine rotation that I was in, they really stepped up and they gave me such support. I was like, wow, this is really what I want to do. And family medicine has been such a joy since then. The interesting thing is, as you learn to practice real medicine and, the reality of the standard American system, because it's no different in the Air Force. I mean, I had sick people, I had people with diabetes, I had people who were overweight. Except we had to discharge those who had certain, disqualified them to be active service, because you have to be ready to go at a moment's notice overseas, wherever they call you. And it was really disheartening to see, you're just writing prescriptions after prescriptions and drug after drug, and people aren't getting better and they're still suffering, right? The suffering is still there. So I'm like, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up for the healing part. This is more suffering. And that really just started to weigh on me. I think maybe in the beginning unconsciously, but then also just the limitations of what I could do, and with these medicines and just procedures. And it was just a tad bit frustrating. So, and the Air Force I have some incredible friends from the Air Force. I had some amazing experiences. I was in the Middle East. I was in South America, really serving those who needed it. But the politics of medicine were just as strong there as anywhere else. And I tend to be a little bit of got to do my own thing. And so I chose to get out, and then we moved to Colorado. But yeah, I learned a lot with the politics of medicine, the limitations of what you can do as just a standard approach to someone who's ill. And I think that left me open to be ready for the experience of switching to a plant-based diet.
Or your next chapter. And so who introduced you to plant-based medicine? How did that evolution begin?
Well, yeah. So there's a fun story. I was actually in Rifle, Colorado. Okay. So we went from Langley Air Force Base to Rifle, Colorado. It's in the little town on the Western Slope. Whenever I see your dad, he's like, Laurie from Rifle. I'm like, yes, Laurie from Rifle. And because I actually met your dad not too far from there in 2013. It was a lovely time. But anyway, it was back in 2012. I had a patient. I had been there a couple of years in this little rural town of about 10,000 people, named after a gun because I found a gun. I'm like, you can't really. Okay, so there's steakhouses, there's ranchers, hardworking, blue-collar people. These are my people. I grew up with these people. They're amazing people, hardworking, and it's a critical access hospital, so we were very busy. And so we did inpatient, outpatient, nursing home, you name it, we did it. And but I had this patient come in one day. She's like, Dr. Marbas, meat and dairy upset my stomach. I was like, okay, stop eating meat and dairy. And she's like, okay. It's like, I knew intuitively that would leave her other foods, but it didn't dawn on me that was strictly plants. Like I'm a little dense sometimes, a little slow to come around, but I will eventually. And what was interesting, she came back in 30 days, and I had made notations in my notes. She'll be back in 30 days. We'll discuss it and maybe kind of add foods back in, thinking more of like an elimination type diet. But she brought her 16-year-old daughter to her appointment. Okay, so now I'm thinking to myself, what did this 16-year-old do to deserve to be pulled out of school and come to her mother's doctor's appointment? I was like, oh, and
I bet I don't even know where you're going, but I bet you it's because she also saw some kind of result.
Oh, yes, she did. And what was funny though is her mom goes, "Now you tell Dr. Marbas what you did." I was like, ooh. I'm thinking I'm going to have an STD type of talk or something. I'm like, no, I'm thinking that's where my mother mind goes. And she's, well, Dr. Marbas, I wanted to help my mom. So we cooked, in Rifle, you have to go buy your food and cook at home because there's no plants available at the regular restaurants, at least, things that you want to eat regularly. And so she cooked, fruits and vegetables, beans and whole grains with her mom. And she goes, I felt so good. I stopped both my ADD meds. I was like, you did what? And she goes, I feel amazing. I stopped both my ADD meds. I don't need them. I'm like, and her mom's like, yeah, why was she able to do that? Now, her mom wasn't upset, but she was like a tad bit frustrated that her daughter had been on these medications with potential serious side effects. And nobody had bothered to say, oh, just eat some plants, so you'll be fine. And her mom's like, yeah, why was she able to do that? And I said, I don't know, but that's the most awesome thing I've ever heard. What were you eating? And she's like, oh my goodness, we were eating what you said. It's anything but, meat and dairy. It's like, so you're eating, we talked about all their foods they were preparing, and it was all fruits and vegetables and beans and whole grains and lots of yummy foods. And I was like, wow. So the moment they left, I literally got on the computer, I Googled plant-based diet, ADD, China study popped right up, Amazon, that guy right over, read it in 2 days, convinced, went plant-based. Pretty much, I was in my mind going plant-based, but I wanted to try it one more patient because I was trying to wrap my brain around this whole situation. Yeah. But I was sitting there reading this thick book, which was an incredible book. And my husband would walk by. I was like, look, they could turn off cancer with plants. And he's like, okay. Like, do you not understand what this means? And so what happened was 2 weeks later, I had a lupus patient come in on a multiple medications. And when you're in rural Colorado, there's not even a pediatric ICU on the entire Western slope. Okay. And there's the Rocky Mountains, which I know you're familiar with. These are some serious mountains. And you don't just, go see a specialist without really planning a multiple day trip or at least an all day trip. And if it's in the winter, you're definitely multiple day trip. So when you have patients, you're managing some pretty severe illness. And this patient had 12 medications, including methotrexate, which is a very strong immune suppressant, chemo type drug, high doses of prednisone, 50 pounds overweight. And she's telling me all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, and this was within a week or so of seeing the last patient, I was like, oh yeah, this is the one. So while she's telling me this, I'm going, how am I going to tell her I want her to eat plants? Yeah. And she's telling me how she can't even sure she can walk or keep working. She's having migraines 5 days a week. She's just hurting. And she's done telling me this and like expecting me to give her some new drug treatment, I'm sure. I said, I don't think there's many drugs left we can provide you, but how about we change what's on the end of your fork? And she's like, and I said, I think if we change what you're eating, I've been reading about this plant-based diet and the properties, the anti-inflammatory properties. I really kind of pushed that side of it. Let's see what happens. And she's like, okay, I'll try anything. God bless her. She was an amazing person. And we measured a CRP before she left, which is an inflammatory of the marker, 3 times high normal. 2 weeks later, I said, you got to come back in 14 days. I can't have you come back longer. I'm too excited about this. She came back. Wow. Her CRP had dropped to just outside of normal, like 0.1. And she had lost 8 pounds. Her migraines were gone. And fast forward 5 months, 50 pounds lighter, off of 7 to 12 meds, including steroids, including the methotrexate. Anyway, that 2-week point when she came back, I went home overnight, cleaned everything out of the house to a 13, 15, and 18-year-old and my poor husband. And my husband's like, wait a minute. I was like, are you still cooking? I said, yeah. He's like, okay. I'm like, how was it? He went on to lose 70 pounds.
Your husband did?
My husband. He was thin when we got married, but then over the years, life happens. I didn't have a weight issue, but he liked to snack on things on the way back between work and back. But what was interesting, the kids, I'd raised them, listen, I'm not a short order cook. You get what you got. You'll eat that. You'll be hungry the next day if you don't eat. I'm pretty sure you'll be all right. It served them well. And I allowed them to give me like thumbs up, thumbs down, if the food was bad, because I took it as a challenge. I said, oh, I will make you go back for seconds. Just wait. And anyway, so I cleaned out the whole house overnight, stayed up till 1 a.m, trying to figure out what to do. That was a Friday. I had a quarter of a grass-fed beef in my refrigerator, or my freezer, in the garage. I had no idea what to do with this. You just don't put it out because there are wild animals that will eat you in Colorado. So you're like, you don't want to track these things. So I was trying to figure out in my brain what to do with these things. I wasn't going to give it to a human. And what happened on Sunday, we went to church, we came back and we opened the garage door and the freezer had broke. And there was all these, the juices and the smell of rotting carcass filled the garage. And my husband's like, Laurie, if you hadn't been with me, I'd have sworn you unplugged it. I was like, that is the big man upstairs saying, we are done. And I haven't eaten meat since. It's been 10 years. Wow. And that's the story of the plant-based diet in the Marbas family.
As you can hear, Dr. Marbas has seen some radical health improvements from her patients, and we here at Plant Strong have witnessed the same. In fact, here's a recent podcast review from a Plant Strong listener. This podcast helped me lose 21 pounds, treat my blood pressure, neck pain, back pain, GERD, decreased my heart disease and cancer risk, kept me motivated to exercise, and has kept me on track for my whole food plant-based diet. Now, I don't have to take a ton of medicine, and this podcast also informed me that there is a specialty called lifestyle medicine. 5 stars. Thank you. Love getting those 5-star reviews and those wonderful comments. Thank you. It means a lot to know that this podcast and the guests that I am having on the show are changing lives. We'd love those 5-star reviews to continue. So if you love what you hear, please rate, share, and follow us on your favorite podcast apps. Now, speaking of lifestyle medicine, let's get back to the incomparable Dr. Laurie Marbas. What you've done and where you are right now with your plant-based telemedicine, how long have you had that? How's it going? And tell me a little bit about that technology and how it's working for people.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I would definitely need to say this was Anthony Masiello's brilliant idea. This was almost 5 years ago now. I kind of had an opportunity. I was working as a medical director where someone would come and stay weeks with you, and we transitioned to a plant-based diet. Had amazing results, but that clinic closed when the funding dried up, with the investors pulled out. So I had a friend say, you should do telemedicine. And so I started doing telemedicine thinking this was just a short-term gig till the next brick and mortar type thing. And what I was finding was that patients were calling in for these acute illnesses. Oh, I've got a cold, I've got this. But I would see their past medical history and go, oh, they have diabetes. And once you do this as a physician and you see the healing that occurs, there is no way you cannot share this message, even if it's as brief as 2 minutes. I was like, hey, I see you have diabetes. I know you called for UTI. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk about your diabetes. Have you ever heard of these things called plants? And I would have my little, I think we have to be better advertisers than the McDonald's down the street. I have to sell you on the idea that there's a better future for you. There is joy. There is less pain. There is less medications. There's healing. If you just would maybe take this journey with me. And so I had this spiel down. It's like my 90-second elevators pitch. And I was having amazing results. And I was having the C-suite of this very large telemedicine company come to me and like, Marbas, we're seeing some really interesting things. You're kind of skewing the lab results here. We're looking for some marketing data. And we're seeing A1Cs drop from 11 to 6 in 3 months. Because what are you doing? Are they working with another doctor? What meds? I'm like, no, I'm just feeding them plants. And they're like, no, really, what are you doing? I'm like, no, I'm really feeding them plants. And so I was telling Anthony, who's a good friend of mine, who lost 160 pounds on a plant-based diet 15 years ago and has kept it off. And he's like, Laurie, we should start our own telemedicine company. I was like, he's not a physician. I was like, are you insane? I'm like, I know. I was invited to go to company meetings with this company. And I was seeing they were very transparent. They're in the red, the forecasting, how difficult it is to get the doctors, the licensing and each state. I'm licensed in all 50 states myself and DC. That is no easy feat. Or cheap.
Wait. Before you go on, because I went through that site and I saw that you are licensed in every state. I think you're the only physician that's licensed in states. What's that process like?
That's a multi-year process and a very expensive and administratively heavy, burdensome process. So each state governs how medicine is run in their state. So I already had Colorado. I had picked up Texas and a few other ones doing the other telemedicine. But in the last 3 years, I picked up the remaining up to 50 plus DC. So it's 51 licenses. Each one you have to be fingerprinted. So I've been fingerprinted more than any other criminal in the United States. So I will never be able to go rob a bank. And then you're having to send records from medical schools. And then you have to send your board certifications and all these different things to each state. Now there is a interstate compact where they're working where you can already live in kind of more one of the rural states like Colorado and get multiple states at once, which was very helpful. And there's been more and more states being added to that, but the majority are not part of that. And so that it's anywhere between $75 to a couple of $1,000 to do that. But as the co-founder, we needed to get to every state as quickly as possible. I don't want to be the every state doctor. I want my other doctors. I have 9 doctors total, including me, including the amazing Dr. Clapper. And I want these guys, and we're going to be adding more doctors and multiple licenses, and I'll be pulling back and running more of the company. We're building an incredible network of physicians who work together about patients, and the brain trust here is incredible. I mean, we have a doctor who was a previous rocket scientist who worked on the space shuttle, who now works with us. Who? The
Which,
amount of
which
this is
doctor
Nikki.
that?
This is Dr. Nikki Davis. She's incredible. I've got Dr. Chris Miller, who has her own lupus recovery story. He was an ER doctor, internal medicine, integrative medicine. I've got doctors who speak Spanish, speak French, who do sign language.
Wow.
I mean, it's so fun to talk to these people. I'm like, wow.
And did you hire most of these people?
All 8 of them, we contracted them. Yeah. So there are plant-based docs. We're growing our network, and we have monthly meetings. We do live webinars. We answer questions. Anyway, we launched March of last year, right when COVID was
actually perfect time. Perfect time.
It was. It took us a year to plan. I mean, there was a lot of logistics. We have an EHR that's, HIPAA compliant. We use Zoom technology with it. We can order meds, order labs. We see patients internationally as well. We can't, of course, order meds or labs, but we can give some advice. But our patients in the United States, I mean, I have patients from the interior of Alaska, Delaware, South Dakota, you name it, Hawaii, random places. They're like, you are the only person I can speak to in this entire state. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm here. And, but it's been a blessing. It's been really fun to see, but we launched March then, it was such a silver lining for us for COVID. Not that I would want another pandemic, but if you're going to launch a telemedicine company promoting health, well, that kind of worked out well for us. We were having, my worry was the perceived difficulty of taking care of someone with telemedicine, but the pandemic literally just obliterated that concern. So patients were looking for it, physicians were looking for it. And here we're like, come eat some plants and get better and decrease your risk of, when you contract COVID, of being really ill or even contracting it altogether. And so we were very, very lucky to have that opportunity to have some extra push as we became successful. So we'll be 2 in March, and we are growing. We actually closed on our first round of investors today. Wow. And for people to reach out to you and we did not seek it. We had to turn people away who were like, here, we want to give you money because we believe in your message. We have thousands of patients. There is nowhere in the world that I am aware of that there is a database of all the information and trends that we're seeing with the plant-based patients. I mean, it's just absolutely astounding what we've amassed, and
so what you've
a lot
got,
of good stuff.
So what you've got going on, as far as there's nothing else quite like it.
No, I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of. And we do a lot of market research, and nothing that I'm aware of.
Well, you know what's so good? I mean, I'm going to interrupt you. What I love about it is, I can't even tell you how many people ask me, where can I go to see a plant-based physician? I'm like, let's see, let's go online and maybe go to plantbaseddocs.com, and maybe it'll give you a listing in your area, your zip code. And I don't know if that ever really works. So I love the fact that this is a resource. As you said, I think that people are very much open-minded now and very much, Zoom competent, that they feel like telemedicine, Zoom telemedicine, you can connect with the doctor. They may not be able to put their hands on you, but I'm sure that you can do probably 80% of what you could do as if somebody was there with you. Was that accurate?
Yeah, 100%. I think the 3 years that I was doing telemedicine prior to launching this really gave me the confidence to know what to do, what to say. And then those docs who join us, I'm very comfortable teaching them what to say, what to do. We have templates. We have over 100 handouts. I'm creating more handouts as we go along about, if I'm seeing questions. So we have an amazing amount of resources. And of course, we build those relationships with people like yourselves who have an amazing audience who are willing to share our message and refer patients to us. We work very closely with Chef AJ. We have, Cyrus and Robbie from Mastering Diabetes. They've been sending me patients even before we launched. And we've just been so lucky to have an amazing network of friends who are willing and trust us with the care of the people that care for them. So we're really happy.
And what is the URL?
The URL, plantbasedtelehealth.com. Can't get much easier than that. And
it's really cool. I spent about 15 minutes on it actually this morning. And then you can see all the doctors. If you want to schedule an appointment, you put, what state you're in, if you have Medicare or not.
Oh yeah, that's
right?
another story.
Another story, I'm sure. And then it pulls up the different physicians that, you can choose from in your state and all that. And you show up every time.
Yes, every time.
And the wait time for you is usually 4 to 6 weeks because you are ubiquitous.
Yep, I'm booking into late February. And trust me, I don't want to be that way, but I'm working as hard as I can. But we're working on bringing on a few more docs, and my docs are getting more licenses as we speak. And so that burden of wait time should decrease as they'll have availability for other physicians. But unfortunately, America has made it very difficult for physicians, for patients to have access to certain doctors with certain knowledge that may not be in the same locality or state. So it's an interesting place to try to navigate, but we've done our best. And I feel like we were very lucky to be somewhat naive when we started this whole thing, because I think if we'd understood all the obstacles that we had to overcome, we'd have walked away and said, "Oh, that was a close one."
Isn't that always the case? That is always the case.
I can only imagine.
Thank goodness for ignorance.
Yes.
And I also noticed you do 30-minute and 60-minute appointments.
Yeah, right.
And they're to me, they're very, very reasonably priced. 150 for 30, 300 for an hour. I think in the medical world, that seems extremely affordable.
We have tried really hard. And honestly, we even played around with as low a price as possible. We run a very lean company. We have been profitable since day one. And it's a very slim profit, but there's two objectives here that we wanted to meet. One, we want to make it accessible for as many people as possible. We have not jumped the hurdle yet of accepting insurance. Most practices have an entire department to run their billing department. And it was just me and Anthony. We bootstrapped this sucker together. So it just took the bandwidth was a little bit much just to get started, but we're hoping to bring in insurance as quickly as possible to make it even more affordable. But we want to make it affordable for patients most as we can. And then we wanted to be able to, pay our doctors that they could actually make as much or more than a brick and mortar job. The last thing I want is a doctor who is passionate about literally caring for these patients and, spreading this amazing message of a plant-based diet and the healing properties that come with it, and not be able to really move forward and do this as an entire practice, as their career, because that is the best thing to lead to burnout. When you're trying to do your regular job and then you're trying to do your passion and side hustle in the evenings or weekends, you're taking away from your family, which is completely opposite of the message we tell everybody, that community, time with your family, relationships. We wanted to be able to have a place for them that they enjoy working with the people that they're surrounding, but it's convenient for them and they're able to make a living as a physician doing this, because going to medical school and residency, it ain't cheap. So, there's a big burden there. And I don't think people quite understand. Most medical students walk away with about $250,000 of debt just finishing medical school. Sure. And that doesn't include the debt they may have had in undergrad. So it was a really big thing for me. Is like, listen, I have to take good care of my doctors. If I take good care of my doctors, they will take good care of my patients. This is how it works. Invest in your people, and they will do everything they can to make sure that the customer and the patient are well taken care of. It's a mantra I've seen that I just can't not live by.
Love that philosophy that you're taking care of these physicians. So you've got 9 right now. Are they working as hard as they want to? Yeah.
So, some of them want to do 10 patients weeks. Others would like to see more, 60 plus. And some of them are doing that. It's just a really growing opportunity. So our next phase, the first phase was just getting started, kind of learning the hurdles, the technology. We switched EHRs about a year ago because the first one was too cumbersome. And this one is a much more nimble EHR. So, there's that part of it, the website, then we have the marketing aspect of it. So now that we have more funding, the marketing will be definitely ramping up, and we have a few opportunities. We're going to be doing part of a study, a 2-year study, working with an insurance company in California, starting in February. So that's really exciting. And we're doing everything we can to, get the word out that we exist and bring on more doctors as the demand increases.
Wow. Do you find right now that are most patients coming to you because they're interested in plant-based and they want to see you, or are they being referred to you guys like they've been told to see you from somebody else?
We have a wide spectrum, actually. So I would say we have the healthy, whole food, plant-based eater who just wants to make sure that everything nutritionally is sound, right? So we can look and do some labs. I put together a template of I call it my plant-based eater template of labs we check for certain nutrient status, and we adjust things accordingly.
What are those? What are those? What are some?
Yeah. So of course, you get your basics, right? So you have your CMP. So this is your liver, kidney, make sure you're not anemic, a CBC. We do your lipid panel. If I have someone who has a history of heart disease, high cholesterol, hypertension, we'll do a more advanced lipid panel where we're looking at the size of the LDL, their inflammatory markers. We look at their LP(a), all of those things. And then we do other things like zinc. We have magnesium, selenium, iodine. That's a 24-hour urine test. That's always a real fun one. We check an A1C. Many times
Wait.
Yeah.
Stop for a sec.
Yeah. 24-hour iodine.
24-hour iodine. What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
So this means when you check for iodine, the blood iodine is not very accurate. So, iodine is really important for thyroid function. So I've been hypothyroid for 25 years since the birth of baby number 2. And when I switched to the plant-based diet, my thyroid actually improved. Not completely resolved, but I had to decrease my medications. And so the iodine is really interesting. We've had some very strict, what we call the SOS eaters, right? They're no salt, oil, sugar, which is fine. But many patients will get their iodine from iodized salt, right? So that was kind of enacted by the World Health Organization back in the mid-90s, because goiter, if you don't have enough iodine, your thyroid can't make its thyroid hormone, you'll develop a goiter. And so that'll decrease dramatically when they iodize the salt. But now we have patients who are making mindful choices not to consume high sodium foods, which, that's table salt. And we'll see, I've had patients come in, they're eating this really healthy plant-based diet. They're told by their doctor, or they had thyroid issues, or they're developing symptoms of hypothyroidism. We check it. Sure enough, they collect a 24-hour urine iodine, meaning they get a little jug from the lab. They get to collect their pee for 24 hours, and then they get to turn it in, and we see how much iodine is actually in their system. And honestly, once we correct that, the thyroid many times will heal itself if it's a very, more recent case and it's not an autoimmune type of thyroiditis. But yeah, there's that.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
Got it.
Zinc, selenium, and then we do checking for diabetes, things like that.
Yep. Anything with omega-3s?
Yep, I do an omega check as well, and that's been interesting. Not everyone is low, but many are low, and there's not really what we call a recommended daily intake, or RDI, as far as the omegas, but there's certain what we call you should be taking, how much you should be taking. And it's not uncommon that I'll see patients who are a bit low. So they can increase certain foods like flaxseed, chia seeds, walnuts, things like that. But we only turn a little small amount of that short chain omega to those long chain preformed, or they can supplement. And what's interesting, I've had a few patients. So I've seen enough patients over the years regularly, thousands and thousands at this point. Just a handful that when switched to a plant-based diet, they started developing some joint discomfort in their hands, their small joints. And once I put them back on some walnuts, I have them supplement with a small amount of the long chain preformed megas. That every single one has resolved. And I'll put them on, ground flax. So that was really interesting. So I think there's certain people who just don't convert that very well if they don't have a large enough intake. So so there's those little tweaks that we can have someone who feels good to make them feel even better. But then we actually have, most of my patients are diabetics. I have type 1s. We have type 1.5. These are ones who have later onset autoimmune diabetes. I try to get every single one of my diabetics on a continuous glucose monitor so I can monitor their blood sugars 24/7. And not that I'm looking at their blood sugar, but I can, they can message me over the weekend. Hey, Dr. Marbas, I'm seeing this happen. Can you tell me what to do? Because as you switch to this diet, diabetes improves so dramatically, so quickly. I need to be in close contact with you so we can deprescribe your medications. Many times I will take someone's insulin if they're a type 2 insulin dependent diabetic and cut it in half the very first day.
Wow.
And I had to learn that lesson with the patient.
That's what we do at our 6 and 7 day medical retreats.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I shouldn't say I don't, but Dr. Clapper or whoever our medical director is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important that you do that because there can be some really serious consequences to those low blood sugars and low blood pressures. So, but then we have folks who are referred to us who are, plant curious, those who are trying plant-based diet, struggling. Those I have actually many who are coming in with a plant-based diet who had definitely some improvement in the cholesterol, but maybe not the cholesterol where they'd like it. And so we look at what they're doing and we tweak some things and get some more improvement. There's some other things
you have them keep like a food log so you can see.
Yes. Yeah, we have a food diary that we have them fill out before we see them. We have a very extensive, what we call a lifestyle medicine questionnaire. We're asking, how are you sleeping? How's your relationships? What are your stressors? Are you exercising? Are you smoking? Are you alcohol? What are you eating? And people have really been very thoughtful when they fill those things out, and it's been very helpful. So it makes that half-hour appointment very productive.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Yeah. But this is so exciting to me. The leap of faith that you took with Anthony, however many years ago, where you are now with this at your second birthday, just around the corner.
Yeah.
And you just have a lot of blue skies in front of you. It's very exciting. And you're doing such great work and helping people. I mean, man, I am so happy and proud of what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been a true blessing to be a part of this community. Honestly, anytime I go to like Plant Stock or if I go to, Plantation Project or the ACLM conferences, my husband's like, oh, you're going to go plug in back to the mothership. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going back to I'm going back to the other aliens. We're getting recharged for the next year.
Well, speaking of plugging in, I mean, are you still the managing editor for the Plantation Project International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention?
The IJDRP, yeah. No, I left about a year ago. I turned it over to a very capable young woman. That was a really fun project. I was on the phone with Scott Stoll and one other individual, and they're like, Laurie, we think you should help us develop the first plant-based medical journal. I'm like, I was like, have you guys ever started a medical journal? And then he's like, no, but we know you can. I'm like, okay. So I literally, it was started with Post-it notes on my hallway because that's the biggest blank wall I had, and just put it all together. I reached out to some amazing friends. We got some incredible peer reviewers. Then we were lucky to bring on, the incredible and most adored Dr. Kim Williams, who I just appreciate so much. And I've learned a ton. I was there from 2017 till last year. So, but, it was really fun. It was really nerve-wracking the first time we launched our first journal. It was well received and it's still going well. I still get emails from folks and it's been really good. I'm so proud of them. Yeah.
Well, again, I'm going to come back to just how spectacular I think it is what you're doing. I had Dr. Dean Ornish on the podcast just recently. And I said, Dean, here we are, it's 2021. Our annual healthcare bill this year is going to be like $3.6 trillion, which is $10,600 per person. We're paying more than any other country on the planet. And he said, no, Rip, it's not 3.6, it's 3.8 trillion. Wow. And then the fact that of that, and this, but of that $3.8 trillion, 85% of that is comprised of all these chronic Western diseases that we know are either preventable or reversible by the prescription that you are basically giving your patients, which is whole food plant-based. Yeah. And the fact that of that $3.8 trillion, not even 3% is devoted to prevention. Mm-hmm. It is ludicrous. It's like, what do we got to do to turn this tanker around? I mean, how many Laurie Marbases do we need, right? And Ornishes and Esselstyns and McDougals to kind of like make a dent and reach that 10% tipping point?
That's a really interesting question. I think it needs to start, like Dr. Clapper's got the moving medicine forward. It really needs to start with the messaging we're giving our young medical students. One, they're impressionable, they're passionate, they're willing to put their life on hold in their 20s to become a physician. I mean, there's a many-year, decade process here. If we can give them the message saying, listen, we're going to teach you the foundation of health, which is we're going to give you a healthy human and we're going to teach you how to keep them healthy. That is the foundation. What are those elements that need to partake in a person's life to maintain health as best we can? And then we'll teach you when things go awry, what to do with medications, with procedures, with diagnostic tools. That is really the message that we need to be setting forward and just build around that. Because if you do that, then they're coming in with the same principles and the same belief systems all together, regardless of what specialty and then patients will hear the same message. Well, what are you doing to maintain your health? Are you doing this, and this? Are you sleeping? Are you eating well? Are you exercising? Are you decreasing your stress? Are you taking care of yourself? That if we could change that message from the very beginning, I feel like you'll have an army of people who are influencers in their communities, right? We have touch points. Any primary care doctor has approximately 1,500 to 2,500 patients on their panel. And in a community where those people have families and coworkers and churches and synagogues and places that they go of worship and all these other interactions, imagine the ripple effects it causes, right? This is a serious contagion that can start happening. So I really feel like physicians need to step up and be the leaders to health. And I really think it can happen. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I come on podcasts and share, why I have my own podcast. Those are the things, and bring on other amazing doctors. I hope I can have hundreds of doctors doing, what we're doing. I hope we can bring on, because there's such a demand, but it really needs to start with the messaging. So we change the belief system of our doctors, because we want to align our actions with our beliefs. And if we do that, I feel we'll see a very rapid change.
Yes. Tell me this, and then I'm going to let you go. You've got the podcast, you do all these other things in addition to, are you considered the CEO of?
No, Anthony's the CEO, the front desk person. Although we did hire our first actual employee, Susan, who's answering our phones, which is awesome. Yeah. So I'm more of like I'd say the chief health officer, chief medical officer type. Yeah.
So how many hours a week do you devote to seeing patients? Do you have a set number?
Yeah. So I see patients 2.5 days a week, and of course there's hours outside that, but then there's the other things, just building the business. So I have patient direct contact hours, I'd say close to 20 hours a week. And then the other, however many hours that's left, I'm devoting to making sure more and more people learn about plant-based telehealth and the incredible work that we're trying to do.
Wow. Laurie, this has been an absolute pleasure. I love all the work that you're doing. I love your passion. Man, I look forward to going on your podcast sometime.
I am very excited about that, actually. Oh my goodness. Yes, I am beyond tickled. Your dad was one of the very first folks I had on my podcast, and I'll never forget. So, because I met him in 2013, I actually flew to Cleveland and spent the whole day with him on his one-day seminars that he does. Because I had dinner with him, my husband and I, and your mom, they sat next to each other. We had such a fun time. Anyway, so I got him on the podcast, and I'm sitting there, and your mom is sort of kidding. She'd walk by and she'd make a comment. She'd walk out, and your dad's telling his incredible story and giving advice, and then suddenly the cuckoo clock goes off. And I don't know if they still have that cuckoo clock, but it was like, and he goes, and he's so calm. He goes, "I bet you never had that happen before." I was like, "No," but I said, "This is so cute. I'm keeping it in."
No, they gave that cuckoo clock to me, actually.
Oh, no, you have the cuckoo clock?
I have the cuckoo clock, and I am so embarrassed to say that we were doing a move from this little house here that's 900 square feet, where I raised the family, and we went in the move, it broke.
Oh, no.
And it's just kind of like in pieces, and so I don't know what I'm going to do with that. But
Oh, you can send it to me. I will get it put
it
together.
was a family heirloom. I mean, it goes back
was
a
it?
long ways.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. No, that cuckoo clock, it is one of my special memories.
I know that's the one thing I asked for, when they were going to be getting rid of some stuff. Yeah.
Oh, well, that was it was an absolute delight. But yeah, so yeah, the podcast is Healthy Human Revolution. And the whole point was like, we got to make our humans healthy. So let's start a revolution. So that's how that started. So
yeah. Well, before we say goodbye, anything else that you want to let the audience know?
I want to say thank you so much for allowing me to, share our message with you. I just think of it an honor anytime someone invites me to hear my story. And number one, I think if you're out there listening and if anything interests you or intrigues you, don't be afraid. Sometimes it's okay. You just got to have a little bit of courage to take an unknown step, and you just don't know what's waiting on the other side. And if you need a little help, there's Rip and other people like myself willing and waiting, just hoping that you'll take the step and invite us to join you, because you don't have to do that alone. And the community is really important. So plug into whatever online community or in-person community that you can, and just, take that first step, because honestly, you will not regret it. I have spent a decade doing plant-based medicine, and nobody's had negative side effects. It's all been positive. And oh my goodness, I call it veggie crack. I get you to eat vegetables. I get a little dopamine hit, and I'm on to my next high. It's like, we just keep this going. You eat more vegetables, you get better. I get a little bit more. So that's my veggie crack.
Three times a day.
Yeah, 3 times a day.
All right, Laurie.
Yes.
Talk to you soon. Peace.
Thank you.
Engine 2, keep it plant strong. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Marbas. To learn more, visit their website at plantbasedtelehealth.com, and be sure to listen to Laurie's podcast, The Healthy Human Revolution, where I'll be a guest in just a couple of weeks. We'll have all the links in our show notes at plantstrongpodcast.com. Keep it plant strong, and I'll be sure to see you next week. The Plant Strong podcast team includes Carrie Barrett, Lori Kordowich, Amy Mackey, Patrick Gavin, and Wade Clark. This season is dedicated to all of those courageous truth seekers who weren't afraid to look through the lens with clear vision and hold firm to a higher truth. Most notably, my parents, Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn Jr. and Ann Cryle Esselstyn. Thanks for listening.